So, throughout the month of November, I am talking to some of my favorite guys about guy stuff, guy issues. Oh. Because I think that there are a lot of issues that face men and sort of uniquely face men that we need to talk about and that ultimately impact all of us. Because if it's impacting the men, it's impacting the rest of us. So, we want to have these conversations in the lead up to International Men's Day, which is November 19th. So, who knew? Who knew there was an International Men's Day? Uh,
I didn't.
so apparently there is. So today I'm talking to Brad, who I've known for a bazillion years. Um, One of my very first jobs when I was still an accountant. Brad knew me back before I was a product manager. And then I moved into product management, and Brad was also a product manager way back in the day. We've even worked, I was like, oh, we actually worked somewhere else together in the middle of all of this. And we've just, yeah, for a little window. And then we've been friends ever since. And so that's how we know each other. But I'll let you introduce yourself and talk about what you do and where you live and all of that.
Absolutely. So I am originally from the South, from the rural Ozarks of Arkansas, but I have actually lived in Los Angeles in the suburbs for most of my life now. I work in technology. I'm a what you call an immersive tech product manager. So that's virtual reality and augmented reality and mixed reality, all the realities. And I have a wife who works in the entertainment industry, and I have a 17-year-old daughter, and we have three dogs.
Three dogs. Three of the cutest little dogs. Well, so as I started thinking about what we could talk about, one of the things I thought would be interesting is to talk about your high performing 17-year-old daughter. Because she's a go-getter. Someday we'll be calling her Madam President. So
Mhm.
I would love to talk about, like given your background and everything along the way that you've learned and the profession you've had and all of those things, but also just the life you've lived, what has it meant to sort of raise this high performing smart kid? Like, what has that been like and what have you learned from it?
It's interesting because in so many different ways, because I mean everybody wants to have a child that you know constantly seeks to achieve the highest standard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you find yourself when you realize your child is that child and you were not that child. In fact, you were Mr. Extracurricular, but you probably forgot to spend the time studying as much as you should have. Seeing a child that has such ambitious goals, I mean, I guess just to level set, she she's been wanting to go into international diplomacy since she was 10. So it's crazy to see that track and everything that informs that track. It's the getting involved, it's the activism, it's the passion, it's the energy and the thought and the compassion.
Hmm.
So I think one of the most interesting things is when you fall into that track of trying to support a high energy performer who's seeking to change the world. You start maybe pushing a little bit too hard, right? And you start wanting them to fly faster,
Mm.
and you have to realize, no, they have to they have to have someone go to change their oil for that first time. They can't just do it,
I'm
right?
done, right?
They it's okay that they're scared to take the garbage out at night and because of the crickets. It's okay. You can't just say, well, you want to change the world, you need to be strong, right? You need to be a superhero day one.
Right.
And I can't limit you by you know going to the car place to get your oil changed. I can't wait with you in line for the doctor's appointment. You need to do these things on your own. So I think it's just realizing that I need to pull back on that, and
Mm.
yes, support her, but
Mhm.
also realize that she needs me to help guide her on those initial
Yeah.
opportunities or challenges,
Mhm.
and not just throw her out there and make her swim.
Come on, kid.
You know what I mean? So it's realizing that and embracing her energy and her compassion and her focus and her willingness to change the world. But it's also realizing that she's still a kid in so many ways. And she has, even though finding strength is important, and she's going to find that when she goes to college and when she goes on her life journey, it's important now that she knows that she will always have, support,
Yeah.
so that she can, learn how to fly her wings, so to speak.
Right, right.
Does that
No,
make sense?
yeah, it totally does. I think it's really interesting because I think when I think back to being, I mean, I'm not a Marlowe caliber high performer, but I was a really good
Sure you are.
student and I was really, I was really involved and I was really ambitious. And I think about my dad sort of, like the pushes and the like, you can do anything, and then being like, whoa, 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 not that, right? Like,
Exactly. I'm that dad, and I need to realize
yeah.
that type of power is very all consuming sometimes,
Yeah, and
and
then
I
you get in your
shouldn't.
head. I mean, I wonder sometimes, like, you get in your head and are like, not only are you ambitious and want these things for yourself, but then you start thinking, I have all these people who are hoping I'll be this good at this thing, and that I'll be, and so the pressure is like, it starts to be this little cooker, right? And so I wonder, have you seen her sort of managing that, and you've had to sort of participate in that and bring what as a leader, as a man, as a as a dad to the table in those conversations, and help her unpack the the pressure cooker, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it can be, you know, an anxiety driver, right? And then once you start bottling that up, it can be, a point where you just
Yeah,
she has that that Charlie Brown moment.
yeah,
But I think, to answer your question, what I've tried to do is just take a step back and help her try to process things in ways that maybe I don't typically process,
sure, yeah,
but trying to find ways that are successful for her,
hmm, hmm,
whether that's, meditation or going for a walk or being silly or, playing games. One of the things that I kind of noticed is, in addition to being a high performer, and I've probably been a little bit mean about this, but she sings constantly. I mean, it's like living with Snow White. And I started thinking maybe that's one of those ways
Hmm.
that she's processing some of this anxiety, right?
Right, right.
And I used to mock her, and I'm really sorry about that, because it was like living with Snow White.
Right.
And I just, Marlo, for crying out loud, can you stop singing? And then I started realizing, you know what? Let her sing.
Yeah,
Let her enjoy the moment.
yeah.
Let her, you know, put up her freak flag. And if that is singing,
Go for
I
it.
shouldn't be the one that suppresses that.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what I
I think
mean?
it's really, yeah, it's interesting because I think we forget that each of us as individuals, you have ways, I have ways, we all have ways that we move energy through our body, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that may be one of the ways she does it, right? I mean, and like, I mean, I talk to myself. Like if people lived with me, they'd be like, "What is wrong with her?" Right? Like, and when people come to visit me, they're like, "Are you talking to me?" Nope. Right? From
Right.
the room, and I'm like,
Yep.
nope, talking to myself. And then sometimes I pretend like I'm talking to the cat. But really, I am just talking out loud to myself because I have been, having lived alone so much
Right.
and been on my own since I was 17, there's so much of the time that I am my best friend, right? Like I am the person I'm trying things out on, right? And so I'll just talk out loud. And so people would be like, what are you doing? I remember my dad even saying like, why, who are you talking to? 'Cause I'd be like in the kitchen doing something. Who are you talking to? I'm like, myself. Of course I used to be like, Jesus, but it wasn't, right?
Right. Right. Right.
so,
Totally. Yeah.
so, but like I think it's so interesting, like that you recognize it, right? And that you know, like, I may have made fun of that, but also that's
But late in life,
part of it.
I wish I had recognized it earlier.
Yeah, sure, sure. No, I think that's important. And I think, I think also sometimes we get so sort of in our own way of being in the world that we sometimes forget, like, oh, hey, maybe I don't know that this is how some people operate in the world, that she's our own whole person, right?
Hmm.
And so you may not, maybe it's like, I didn't know people did that, but they do, right? And so you get to
Right.
learn that by having a kid.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's super
totally.
interesting. Do you feel like she is like, is there anything you've done or said to her in particular to sort of prepare her for being a young woman in a world that is not always so tuned for young women?
Yeah, I think it's very important that she has an awareness of what's going on around her,
Yeah.
and she has been very fortunate to live and have very supportive parents and very supportive extended family and very supportive friends. um, and there's so many in this world that don't have that,
Yeah.
so I think helping her, at least, whether it's an awareness to news or topics, or geopolitical changes, or what, just having that curiosity, and helping her to keep that going,
Hmm.
whether that's with a new person that that may need a friend, or whether that's a particular topic that's happening in in one part of the world.
Yeah.
And I think she's embraced that, and I think that's why she has such a world vision of wanting to make a big impact of good on the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just helping her, you know, ask questions, I
Yeah.
think is
See
has
it.
been
Yeah.
key,
Yeah.
because things don't always have to be the way just because they've always been that way, right?
Right. No, it's true. It's true. And I do think, I mean, I think sometimes we do want them to have space to be buffered and protected while they're
Mhm.
growing these skills and learning. And then they go out into the world and everybody's not like, let me hand you something. And they're like,
Right.
wait a minute.
Totally.
You're not letting me talk because I'm the girl in the room? And the first time that they have, I mean, I see with my niece, the first time they have these experiences, they're like, wait a minute, what is happening? Like, I've always been able to be equal because I had a family like that, or I had a school like that, or I had
Right.
this kind of, program or whatever. And then when they walk out into the world and somebody talks over them or says the same thing that they just said out loud as though it was their original idea, and they're like, that still happens, right? So like I think they're aware of it because they're so aware of so much. They're all so worldly in terms of what they know, but when it
Right.
happens to you, it's very different.
Well, I think you hit on something. It's realizing, the entitlement that I have, obviously, as a man. But I think, it was really interesting. In college, I took an African American women's literature class, and I'll never forget it. There were only two dudes in the class, and then it was all women. And when the teacher was saying "you guys," she was talking to the women. She wasn't talking to me. So I just thought that was that was the first time I had seen that type
Yeah.
of. And to your point,
Mhm.
yes, helping my daughter realize that she's you know looked at differently just because she's a woman,
Yeah.
and she has to. There's all so many other things that I don't think about as a guy that she has to think about,
Yeah.
almost kind of like in a three-dimensional world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's all women. And I get that, and learning that through her eyes, and seeing her growing up as a high performer, and wanting her to, to go back to our early part of our conversation, wanting her to fly right away. It's
Yeah.
no, it's take the time,
Yeah.
learn that, you know,
Yeah. That's so
there's good intent and there's bad
yeah.
intent.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just got to be a little cautious.
Yeah. Totally. And I mean, I think she also has the benefit of having a really strong mom, right? Like somebody who's
Totally.
been through it,
Totally.
has had this career and but
Hmm.
also knows who she is, and
Yep.
nobody's perfect, but she has a strong mom. Like she doesn't have somebody who's been some little shrinking violet who sits in the corner and is told what to do, right? So
Right.
So she has that
Absolutely.
example as well. A very
Totally.
close example. So I think that's great.
And they're very close, which
Yeah.
I think, which is great. It's wonderful that she has such a very strong relationship with her mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, let's shift gears a bit. One of the other topics that I've been discussing with men is and I mean it's a big part of Movember, right? So the Movember raises money for men's health awareness because men are often underdiagnosed or undiagnosed until late stages of things like cancer and diabetes and all kinds of health issues because they don't go to the doctor. I don't know if you've
Yep.
heard, but men don't go to the doctor.
I know.
So
Yeah, I have a very good story about that.
yeah, I want you to share your story. Share what you would be happy to share. I think there's a lot to learn about like having conversations about this because I think if men hear it from other men, I think they're more likely to say maybe I better go get that checked out. So I'm curious if you would share your story.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think it's a common sense story, but I mean, just like there's the whole trope of us men not asking for directions. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's nothing to worry about. I guess my medical attention journey as we get older, I didn't go to the doctor for gosh, I'm gonna say 20 something years. I mean, it's just something I hated. I just didn't enjoy it. It's just it wasn't something top of mind. And then of course I started having health issues, and then I think what the barrier that I started to climb over was just taking the time. And my advice to anybody that has been putting this off
Mm.
is just take the time to find a doctor that you like.
Right.
So many times you just whether it's going to urgent care or what, and you just fall into that trap of the stranger. No, take go find reviews because they're out there.
Yeah.
Find a doctor that you like, and once you find that doctor that you like, oh my god, it will just change your world. I have done that.
Yeah.
I found after 20 something years, I have found a doctor. I see him every 4 months.
Mhm.
um, he's funny. He laughs at my jokes. He sees me as a person. He
Right.
knows what's going on in my life.
Mhm.
I know what's going on to an extent in his life,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
he's got to have barriers,
Yeah.
but my point is finding someone that you can have a relationship with in terms of trust,
Right.
especially about anything going on in your body,
Yeah.
is absolutely critical. And I think so many times we just see the same person because it's easy and we get it out and check it off the list. No, take the time to find the right doctor for you.
Yeah.
That would be my advice.
No, I think
Because
that's huge. We forget that they are actually working for us. I think
mm-hmm,
it's like anything where a person has power or authority or knowledge that we don't have, we sort of ascribe to them some sort of godlike status and we don't question them. But like ultimately they're working for us.
mm-hmm,
Like they are
totally.
a service provider to each of us as individuals. So find one that you can go, yeah, I trust this. I don't take my car to a mechanic I don't trust.
Right.
Why would I take
Exactly.
this to a doctor that I'm like, I don't want you to touch me or talk to me? Right? Like,
And it may take time to find a doctor that works for you. And I mean, and I get, people are on different healthcare,
of
especially
course.
in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guarantee if you invest in the time to find a doctor that you trust
Yeah.
and you can have a personal relationship with, it, it would change your world in terms of any fear that you might have of going to the doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. It is fascinating because the data is saying that men go to the doctor about 30% of the time that women do. And I can correct for that based on pregnancy, but I also think it's bigger than that because not all women go through pregnancy and not all, so but for across a population for that to be sort of I mean, it's a statistic I saw. I don't know if it's totally accurate, but I think it speaks to we just don't go. Men just don't go.
Right.
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 And it's funny because another friend of mine was like, well, I don't like to go to the doctor. I'm like, I'm sorry, did you think I do like to go to the doctor? The women are like, yes, pap smear. Right? Like we're not
Right.
we're not
Right.
hooray, I get to go get a mammogram. But we're almost like it's such a regular scheduled check-in kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
we as women, we talk to each other about it.
Right.
And that's the other thing I think that's missing here is that men don't talk to each other about stuff like this very often, right?
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we're often like, I think with women, we often like, I said we sort of crowdsource information about our bodies. We're like, what happened? Have you had this happen? Did you have this happen? What happened here? Did it? And we're just
Right.
always doing that, even if we then make the decision for ourselves. But I think you guys just don't have those kinds of conversations very often, unless I'm crazy and wrong.
I definitely, you're absolutely 100% right early on in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just doesn't happen, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older,
Yeah.
I in and you've kept friends for a long period of time,
Right.
I think some of those conversations can be had, and I think
Yeah.
that's okay to have.
Yeah.
And I've had those with some people
Yeah.
at this later stage, just because you're just having so many more issues.
You're like, why are you walking like that? Well, right? It's like you gotta have something to talk
Right.
about, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And I think that's so important. That men are willing, to your point, to go find someone that they can work with. That can give them like somebody that they'll enjoy at least talking to in
Right.
order to get the help they need, right?
Totally.
Because I mean,
Yeah. I
men
think it's
they're
critical.
dying younger than women, right? And a lot of that is like, well, we found out he had cancer and then he died 2 weeks later or whatever, and it's like, okay, because
I
they're
know.
busy.
Well, I mean, I think as younger, obviously, you don't pick your doctor,
Right.
right? So I think it's ingrained in you. You take what you get and you don't get upset. No, if the doctor's not right for you, find another doctor.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, I had something similar with the NHS, right? Like I had a doctor that I just didn't feel like he told me what to do and I did it and I was like, I'm not getting
Mm-hmm.
better. And one of my friends
Right.
from the States was in town and I was telling him about this and he's like, go to somebody else. And I was like, right.
I know.
Of course I know how to do
I
that,
know.
right? But it's like as an expat, I was like, I think I have to just follow the system. And I'm like, in the
Right.
States, I would have been like, yeah, you're fired. Next, right? Like, because I'm paying for it. So
Yeah.
it was such a like, oh yeah, I could do that. And I did, right? But I remember getting a doctor in Seattle and having her like open the door to her office and tell her admin like push my appointments back. I need to have a longer conversation here and being like, you're my new best friend, right? Like, and just
Totally.
loving that she was like, no, we need to, I want to listen to you. I want to hear you. This isn't a
Yeah.
quick appointment. So it's huge, huge. So, as sort of a closing question, I'm curious, who are do you have people, men in your life, and if not, then women, but do you have men in your life that you feel like you really can talk to? Like that if something is up, that you can have conversation with, and how have you cultivated that, um and what does it do for you, I guess?
So I do. I'm very, very fortunate. I have some very close women friends, which you are one
Yes.
of those, and male friends. I think prior to the pandemic, did I have those relationships? Maybe I had like one friend that I could go
Mhm.
to and tell
Mhm.
all those things. But I think the pandemic, obviously, because it was such an isolating experience across the world, um, I'm an extroverted person to begin with.
Yeah.
So I craved that. So I took the initiative to build relationships with people.
Yeah.
So with my male friends, yeah, I think I'm very fortunate. I probably have a group of about 5 to 6 that I could tell anything to, and they could
Yeah.
tell me things. And so, what do I do to keep that going? Um, I I invest the effort, right?
Yeah.
I text. I text them once a week if I haven't heard from them. I'll do regular calls with my friends that are, you know, out of state from where I live.
Yeah.
So, and then they have that relationship with me. So
Right.
I only kind of found that bigger circle later in life.
Mhm.
But I'm glad I did. And I think, I encourage people to make that effort. And again, if there's people, and we've talked about this, there are people in your life that you feel like are your best friend, but they don't give back as much as you give to them.
Yeah.
You don't have to take that.
There are other people who want to be your friend.
there are other people that will totally, and then of course that me bring those other people back to you that.
Yay! I'm
But
jealous.
yeah,
Right?
I'm very fortunate with my male friends,
Yeah.
the ones that I have in my life, and most of them actually don't even live close to me. So it's
Yeah.
you have to make an effort and
Yeah.
do the video calls and the texting and things like that, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And I think that's so important that you said that, because I do think, the data is saying that men, they rally around activity and then
Hmm.
still don't talk to each other, right?
Right.
And when pushed, they're like, that would be weird. And I'm like, why? And as women, we're sort of like, you need to talk to your friends, right? Like,
Yeah.
why don't you talk to your? I'm not going to tell him that. It's like, okay, well, great, right? So then it's like the emotional labor rests with your wife,
Sure.
your partner, or your children, or
Right.
whatever, your mother or whomever, which is fine. We're happy to do that, but we also can't give you advice that men can give you, right?
Right.
It's like it's having rounding that out so that I have male friends for the same reason, so that I have a different perspective than just the women in my life, right? But I just think it's I just am seeing that it's so important.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
And it's
Yeah.
really, like you said, not everybody, like, be clear on what reciprocation looks like, right? Like, I'm gonna do
Right.
this and then you're gonna do this, right? Like there's gonna be
Yeah.
some back and forth, right? Yeah. And I think you and I,
Yes.
like, we've been friends for forever. It feels like for years, since I was in my
Yeah.
20s, right? And I'm not anymore.
Mhm.
And and yet the pandemic was kind of the thing that we were like, hey, let's check in on each other, because
Mhm.
we were both like,
Totally.
I'm at home in Berlin in major lockdown, right? And I think you and like two other friends that were like, can we talk every couple of weeks, or let's
Oh
check
yeah.
in. And I think that became so important that we were like, well, let's keep doing that, right?
Yeah.
um, because you start to realize, like, oh, I actually need that check-in. I need somebody that's
Yeah. It adds value.
okay.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and I think we do see. I think with our one thing that we miss, like what we need in friendship is more. You need some data across time to know how someone's doing, right? And if
Hmm.
you just have friends that you check in on twice a year, or that you see once in a while, or you only see them in person, but you need these friends who have some data about you and know that when you go, yeah, I'm fine, that you're not, right? And they're like, are you?
Right.
Are you sure? Right? And that needs regular um, exchange, right? To your point.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, that's what I hope for men. I want them to have those kinds of friendships. So that's why I wanted to ask you about it. So,
Thank you.
Brad, thank you for coming and talking to me. This is super fun. And I think this will really help some guys out there who maybe need to rethink being a girl dad, rethink their health concerns, rethink how their friendships look. I think that's really great that you were able to talk about those things. So thanks.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed our conversation as well.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you'd like to donate to Movember, an organization that does really raise money and awareness for men's health issues like prostate cancer and testicular cancer, and for men's mental health and suicide behavioral health issues, please go to the QR code in the corner and give some money on behalf of the men in the world who need that lift. So, thanks, Brad.